Yes, Delirium was a good league, but probably not for the reason that you're expecting. Delirium was a league that gave us probably some of the most broken items, most broken interactions, builds, and economy states that we've probably ever seen in the history of Path of Exile. But as happens so often in history, unfortunately, things are generally remembered by the outcome, by the end of what happened, not by how they began. So before we get into the nitty-gritty, let's go back to how Delirium began. So Delirium was the league that I told myself, this league looks awesome. It looks like there's going to be a ton of cool stuff that happens. I'm going to get my things together. I'm going to make sure that I can make all kinds of videos, all kinds of content. I'm going to stream every single day. I'm going to love this league. It's going to be amazing. And unfortunately, I was kind of let down. One of the biggest things that let me down was that in the past, I've been burnt before by video game companies giving us promises. Now, if you remember a little old game called World of Warcraft, that's a game that I've played for quite some time. And when we were given Warlords of Draenor, Blizzard promised us, we won't do it again, don't worry, this next one's gonna be great. We promise. There's not gonna be any issues, we won't do this to you again. Promise. And then we got Legion, which is probably one of the most beloved expansions that Blizzard has ever put out for World of Warcraft. However, immediately after Legion, we got Battle for Azeroth. And Battle for Azeroth was an absolute dumpster fire. And when I think of the situation with what happened with Delirium and all of the promises that we got with Delirium, although not exactly the same, I tend to remind myself of what Blizzard said about how they won't burn us again, how it won't happen, we're ahead of schedule, everything is good, don't worry about it, the holidays didn't affect us, we're gonna be fine. And that obviously wasn't the case. Now, I love GGG. I think they're an awesome company. They have made one of my favorite games of all time, and probably the best ARPG that's ever come out. However, companies do get, might I say, complacent when they start doing so well, and I think that that's happened to GGG a little bit. However, one of the main reasons that I think that Delirium was such a good league is that we have seen that GGG can learn from their mistakes. Now, when Delirium actually came out, some of the first issues that we had is that the game was horrifically balanced. The monsters were too strong. When I was originally streaming it, I almost didn't want to do the Deliriums because I was getting killed by everything. Anything that I was running into was killing me, and I had no idea why. The mechanic didn't really make much sense. I personally still think that the fog should have like physics and it should like move around walls like we have to, instead of it just traveling through things. I think that that would balance most everything and fix almost every problem, but who's listening to me, right? One of the major issues that I had is that you couldn't see what was killing you. That was the biggest problem with the league. That was addressed. Great. The things that were killing you too easy. That was addressed. Awesome. It just took them almost a month to be able to do it. Now, I do understand there were some issues with the worldwide pandemic that we went through, but most of this happened before that actually was in full swing. But we got our fixes, everything was good, and I was like, okay, so they fixed most things, everything seems okay, I'm not too worried about it. They said they wouldn't do this before, but they did go through and fix as much as they could with the time given. But it still left me thinking, these leagues aren't finished. We are beta testing them. And I think that most people that have played Path of Exile for a long time understand that. And it's something that I really hope is fixed by Diablo 4. I think that Path of Exile has gone without competition for quite some time. I think that we have no other games in the market, in the just ARPG, dungeon crawling, loot explosion kind of market. There's not really much else out there. We had Wolcen, and everyone knows how that went. We have Grim Dawn, which is more of a single player, slower style game, and then Diablo 3, and that's pretty much it. There are some other smaller games, but they haven't really been fully released. They haven't shown any big promises that would dethrone Path of Exile. I'm hoping that when Diablo 4 comes out, there is some serious competition to Path of Exile, because Path of Exile is currently my favorite game right now. It is absolutely my favorite game, and I want to see it succeed, but I feel without competition, it's beginning to stagnate a little bit. Now, this leads us to where the game is actually pretty okay. The league has been balanced quite well. We got a bunch of changes to the visibility of the league, which I'm still a little bit upset about, because they said, oh, well, we weren't aware that, you couldn't see anything. It's like, this has been a problem for a long time now. It's like gray on gray, or green on green, or black on black, or red on red. I mean, we've had issues with them saying, oh, well, we didn't realize that you guys couldn't see anything. It's like, well, just own up to the mistake. Don't just say, oh, well, we didn't think it was a problem. You've known it was a problem. We've said that it's been a problem many times before, starting with the original Malachi fight. That's been changed a little bit now, and it's much better. Good job. There were a few more things that I don't think GGG were ready for, And the first one was a video that I saw just a few days into Delirium League. This was kind of the precursor video to the really big one that we'll talk about in a minute. But there was a video, and I'll try to find it and see if I can put a picture up of it. I'm not sure that I'll be able to find it because it was a smaller video, but it was a guy playing a Wander build, and he was stacking a bunch of Herald jewels, and he was like, oh, well, you can get this really cool interaction where all 5 Heralds only cost you about 8% of your mana with this set of jewels, and you go this Ascendancy and all the blah, 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 blah. And I was like, wow, that seems really broken. But it didn't really get too far, right? Some changes happened. The jewels became more expensive, but it really hadn't hit its peak yet. And when it did hit its peak is when we got this video, the one that changed everything. That was the Scion Voices stacking video. This is where we learned that this league is broken and things might not be able to be repaired. Originally, this video didn't cause too many waves on the first day or two. However, it did start a conversation. It started a conversation about how far can this go? And it honestly went pretty far. The game was absolutely broken completely apart. And the main reason for that is that we learned that aura effectiveness does not only affect auras from skills. We learned that aura effectiveness also works on headhunter buffs. The major problem was the necklace Solstice Vigil and the Shaper's Presence buff. Aura stacking caused this buff to also be more powerful. Now, I'll put the item on screen here so you can see it, but the issue is that Shaper's Presence gave you effects on you and nearby allies expired 20% slower. I think it used to be 33%. The problem here is that this allowed buffs to basically be almost infinite. So any kind of minor buffs that you could put on yourself, it lasted pretty much forever. And this was a problem. And GGG realized this, and they did something that is mostly unprecedented in Path of Exile's history. And this is the second reason why I feel that this league was a good league. We learned that GGG is willing to take the step, learn from their mistakes, and fix something that is breaking their game. It's something that I'm not sure has happened at this level before. If it has, make sure to let me know down in the comments, because I'm not actually sure that there's been anything this big of a change, but I'm all willing to hear a history lesson. So be sure to let me know if you can think of any others. But this showed us that they are willing to change their game, even if it offends a portion of their player base. Now, the problem here is that there were a bunch of players that invested into these items, and the moment that it was announced that these items were being nerfed, those items lost all of their value. Anyone that put all of their probably real life money, because think, there's a lot of people that RMT in this game. So if they invested real life money into these items because they don't have time to play the game, they just lost out on a ton of money and they're upset. That's kind of their own fault because they're, purchasing items for real money. But those people are very, very upset now. And I'm glad that GGG decided to fix that. However, there was something that happened very nearby this that upset me at the same time, and I think this set a precedent that I'm a little bit worried about for the future. Because we learned that GGG is absolutely using third-party tools as actual development. They are, instead of developing these tools and developing these things for their game, they're just allowing the third-party tools to do it for them. Now, normally I think that it's fine to have third-party tools. I think that it's okay to have options. However, there is no option here. GGG does not offer these things. You have to get them through third party. And what I'm talking about is loot filters. Loot filters are not something that GGG has officially endorsed in anything but the console version of the game, and that is out of necessity. Without a loot filter, the game actually does not function in the high end. Now you might be saying, oh, it's not that big of a deal, you can play without a loot filter, but anybody that has played in Blight League knows that there are too many items in this game, and without a loot filter, you are pretty much screwed. So I think that it's fine that GGG endorses loot filters. I think that that's okay. However, they really need to give us a base modifiable loot filter that is at least acceptable, right? Think of the way that Neversink does his loot filter from filterblade.xyz. They give you tiers where you can just cut out a certain amount of the items that you don't want to see. There needs to be something available from GGG in this regard. I've said many times in the past, they should just buy out his loot filter one time, put in a base version of it and then update it themselves, or just something. Just pay the guy to make the loot filter. Who cares, right? There needs to be something. There needs to be some kind of base loot filter in the game, because we can't keep relying on third-party tools to do everything for the game. Honestly, I've seen so many people turned off by this game when the first thing that is suggested to them when they start playing the game is, oh yeah, go download this loot filter from this website. What do you mean a loot filter? Oh, well, it's this guy who made a loot filter that makes all of the items actually look cool, and it like gets rid of a whole bunch of unnecessary stuff. And they're like, I really have to go to this website and download this random thing from someone that I don't know to play the game? Yeah, sorta, if you want to have any fun with it. I mean, if you make it to the end of the game without it, you're going to be miserable. So we've made it past the middle league problems. The mid-league nerfs are done. We've made it through all of the issues. The game is fixed. Where are we at? Well, they fixed the problems, but a new challenger arises. Herald is on the scene. And honestly, it's the Herald of the end. This is where I feel that Delirium truly went off of the rails. It's not with the mid-game nerfs, it's not with the craziness of all of that, it's not with the Scion video. It is Herald. He is the one that broke this league, and this is the third reason why I feel that Delirium was a good league. We learned that too many items is a bad thing. The economy of Delirium is one of the absolute most imbalanced economies that we have ever had, bar none. There has not been a time that I can remember in Path of Exile's history where the economy has been this imbalanced. Now, what I'm talking about is the fact that there are basically 3 builds that I can think of off the top of my head that can actually handle all of the content of the game and are of a similar power level. And I'm talking a very high-end power level. The first build being Herald stacking, the second build being Archmage Stormbrand, and the third build being anyone who wants to invest 500 Exalt into a build. Those are basically the only options that you've got. And what this means for the economy is that because these few builds, mainly the top 2, are so insanely powerful, no other items are worth anything. The only things that are worth money are things that impact those 2 builds. So if you find an item that isn't something for one of those 2 builds, you can almost be assured that it's not worth anything. Jewelers were not worth anything. Fusings actually bottomed out harder than I've ever seen. It got to the point where Jewelers and Fusings were worth so little that you couldn't trade an Exalt worth of Jewelers in one window. It required multiple windows to get a single Exalt worth of Jewelers. I don't think I've ever had that problem before. The cost of creating a 6-link went down to roughly 1 Exalt. 6-linked items were only worth around 1 Exalt more than their counterparts. That's nuts to me. So the economy absolutely torn apart. And honestly, it kind of felt good. And you know why? Because I was able to play pretty much any build I wanted besides those 2, which I wasn't really even that worried about in the first place. I was able to play everything. I played more builds this league, more cool interactive builds than I've probably ever done before. Now, some of that is because we got the cluster jewels, which I haven't really mentioned because I don't actually think that cluster jewels were that big of a part of the Delirium League. GGG has said that they wanted to introduce the cluster jewels for some time, and they just decided to include them in the Delirium League. Those are a completely separate topic that we'll probably talk more about in Harvest. I was able to play more builds and do more things than I've pretty much ever been able to before. And you know why? Is because all of the items that I wanted to use were easily available. Now, if you're any fan of my channel and you've seen any of my videos, you know I typically stick to builds that I think the average player could do and make use of. I tend to not go over 10 to 15x at the very top end on any of my builds, almost ever. And that made it very easy for me to play a bunch of builds, a bunch of cool stuff, try all kinds of things, and just have more fun than I've pretty much ever had. And it led me to realize that we're getting too many items, and none of them are good. I think that for the future of Path of Exile, we really need items to drop that we can use. And this leads me to a positive note, because with the spoilers and all the information that we've gotten about Harvest, I personally think that GGG is going in the right manner. Now, Chris has said that they think that they're completely breaking the game open wide and they might be actually destroying Path of Exile. And I'm all for it. And you know why? because crafting is the coolest thing the Path of Exile has ever done. It is the reason I feel that this game is so much better than any other one out there. The amount of depth that we have in the crafting system and the item system is so insane and just awesome that it kind of just towers above most other things that I can think of. And in Harvest, we're going to get the option to craft possibly insane items. We've been told that early on, players, while they're leveling, are going to be able to take items that they already have and make them more powerful as they level. That's exactly what we need. We need more impactful items, not more items. Less items, but more impactful. And that's something that I really hope that we can learn going forward for Path of Exile 2, because Path of Exile is my favorite game of all time. I really want it to do well, I really want to see it succeed, and that's probably the biggest reason that I think that Path of Exile is suffering right now. Too many items, and none of them are good. So remember, if you like my content, you like this video, make sure to give it a like to help other people see it. Consider subscribing to the YouTube channel for more content similar to this. And as always, stay safe out there in raid class, and I'll see you guys in the next video.